quadrant right at the top there.
Pause. Okay. So just to go over a little bit, again, why we're here today. The original strategic plan was created in 2017 and adopted early 2018. And we've, looking over the old document, we've actually accomplished probably half of the goals that were, or the goals that were on there, the objectives that were on there. But there were still some that weren't dealt with. They were paused during COVID. Chief Carrera was kind of the holder of the strategic plan and the champion behind it. And then it was kind of paused when he took over at the city administrator, interim city administrator for a while. And then we didn't get these finished by the end of the year. So as you remember, before he left, Chief Carrera extended it because it technically expired the end of 2022 because it was a 5-year plan. So he extended it at the middle of 2023 till the end of 2023. The idea being that the city was planning on doing a citywide strategic plan in 2024. And it made sense, even though the fire department has to have their own for accreditation purposes, it made sense to try to wait and use the same vendor so that they'd be more closely aligned and we'd be able to make sure that, they were each working together. And then, so that was done in May, I believe, May or June of 2023. We extended it to 2023. And then as this drug out a little bit longer, we were looking at accreditation and talking with some of our mentors in accreditation. They suggested that we have a interim strategic plan to cover the gap between the end of 23 and to when the city does their plan. So that's why we're here tonight. They said that having a workshop with the authority having jurisdiction, the public safety committee, and then we also invited some key members of the departments. We have Lieutenant Bill Wisham is here representing the career staff as well as the union. And then online we have Robert Angersano and Catherine Cotton, who are leaders in our volunteer force. So they're kind of representing the volunteer side of it. Based on fatigue, we asked them about, should we engage the public on this? And their suggestion was because of fatigue we were probably going to want to do this in 2024. They suggested that we just do it as a smaller group and look at what we currently have for the objectives and the goals that are left. See if are they still valid? Do we want to get rid of some of them? Do we want to update some of them? And then also look at, are there any other ones that we want to add for the next year or so in between the period when the city does another full strategic plan for the whole city. So that's just and I know you probably heard me saying this over the last couple of months. That's kind of the reason why we are here tonight. And the plan for tonight is, I just have a couple of slides just to talk about some terms. And then I'm just going to bring it up on the screen one at a time. We're going to look at what the previous goals were, kind of talk a little bit about between myself and Captain Fouts. We'll talk a little bit about if we've done anything on them, where we are, and then we can talk as a group as to, if there's questions, if we want to change it, we can kind of look at them each individually. He's going to be taking notes for us, so we can revisit it as we're talking. And it doesn't necessarily have to be finished tonight. And, we could also, as we go through this, there might be some questions that come up, or we need to gather some more data. We can always come back to it, but this will at least get us started. So I figured we'd go all the way through the current ones. At the end, there's also a couple of slides that talk about things that were done in the first strategic plan, the SWOT analysis. So there's some listings, some tables that show the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from that first one. So we can also look at those up on the screen, see if any of those are still valid, if we want to change, add anything to that. And then we can talk about if there's some new ones that we want to add. So that's kind of what I envision this to be. Just kind of a free flow of information. Like I said, we're recording this so we can come back and listen to it later. And then also Jake will be taking notes for us. So does anybody have any questions before we get started? All right. So let me share our screen here and get the PowerPoint going. And we're gonna have to minimize, these guys, see if you can just kind of keep it on.
I got you.
If they raise their hand or something. There we go. So I just wanted to, and this was just straight out of the last strategic plan. This is more just some of the things that are listed as we go through. You might notice some of these terms. So I just wanted everybody to give a chance to just kind of make sure we understood what we were talking about in regards to the goals, objectives, the critical tasks, and the outcomes. So I'll just give you a chance just to review that real quick. We move on to the next one here. The next one is, this just goes again about what kind of gives the overall reason why we have a strategic plan. Talks about the, becoming an important part of the organization's efforts. By embracing these components, the organization's future will be effectively and efficiently guided. We use that document. We talked about it monthly at our officers meetings. We would bring it up on the screen. We had a spreadsheet of where we were. Same thing that I brought up, that I bring up as part of the accreditation report that I give you. There's some other ones that are kind of sprinkled in there that were specific goals that we were working on outside of the strategic plan. But for the most part, some of the same things you saw in those are going to be things that we're going to talk about tonight. These are just a little bit more broad reaching. So here's how we're going to do it. So you can see this is how Chief Carrera, this is just cut and paste out of the last strategic plan. This is how it was presented to the council back in May or June when it was approved. So at the top, it gives the goal, and then it gives the steps underneath the two, if there's individual objectives underneath the goal. So that's how we're going to kind of look at it. Some of them we'll see two together. Some of them will just be one, just kind of depending on how it was grouped together in the original strategic plan. And realizing some of these are probably things that we don't necessarily have a lot of control of. These are, what came out of that original plan 5 years ago, but wanted to go through and just see. So the first one we have here, the goal was to work with the city government to gain and maintain sufficient and sustainable funding for the fire department. The first one we had under there was integrate fire department perspective and requirements into the city development building permit plan process. Let's see, this kind of goes back into, right now the building official is John Cooper, the building official, is also the fire marshal, and that's in the part of the planning department. I think some of the conversation where this one first came is looking long range, as the city grows and we move away from, all the work that the planning department was doing with all the permits and all the new houses and stuff. Would it make sense to integrate the fire department more back into the fire marshal duties, possibly down the road, looking at, whether we can, if there's any restructuring. I think there's, I think you are aware, Shamlis, is that, Cooper possibly could be retiring in a couple of years, and that might be an opportunity to maybe move some of those duties back into the fire department. So that's what I think this one kind of refers to, is involving the fire department more into the development building permit plan process, so that, we have a little bit more say as to, things that would be more fire friendly, whether it's a sprinkler code or design standards for width of streets, anything like that. I think that's kind of what this broad goal was looking at.
Do you want us to speak on these things?
Yeah, I think I was just going to kind of one at a time and give an opportunity for people to speak on it.
So where does the language come from? Like say for number one, where does that language come from? Is that provided language, or is that language that Chief Carrera wrote? Or?
That was from the original. That's directly out of the original strategic plan.
That's out of here. Yeah. And do you know where that language came from?
Yeah, that came from ESCI, the consultant that we used to build the plan. They took our input as a work group, an internal work group, and then translated it into the language rather than just the short speak that we'll use on it.
Right.
Translated it into something that would be more palatable for the council to be able to adopt.
So that was taking you were part of the original strategic plan. We had a large group of citizens, fire department, business leaders, And there's a bunch of questions that we went through, and we gave them a lot of information, and then they boiled that down into this is what came out of that, which was approved by the council way back when.
I just have a suggestion on style of these kinds of things, like, it would be more comfortable for me if instead of integrate, it said provide, right? So providing the fire department perspective in that, in that city development process, seems like valuable information. Integrate seems like maybe a little bit overstepping the bounds of the fire. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and this could be one too, that, you know, is this one that we're going to necessarily solve in the next year and a half? Probably not. You know, and when I was looking at all these, this is one of the ones I was thinking of too, is maybe this isn't one that we're necessarily focusing on right now. There's some other ones a little bit later, but I mean, we can leave it in there. But again, this is one that we're probably not going to be, you know, just thinking out of all the things we have coming in the next year or so. I don't think this is anything that we're going to make any strides on in the next year or so. But it doesn't mean that we can't leave it in there to still, so that it'll be something that's brought up at the next plan.
I think what's really important about this document, and we were talking
This is
about
the
how many
2017, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we put things together, whether it's the city or the council or whomever, any organization. Is it actually being followed, or is it just meeting the requirement? of
Kind of like
putting it in
make
the
you
language?
point in the last meeting.
And I think since 2017, this gives them kind of a way to gauge and figure out, are we hitting this? Are we not hitting this? And so I think it's useful for the chief to go through so that we get the whole flavor of it. And then I think coming back to, okay, what do we need to do as a priority that we can tackle now for the next year, whatever it might be. And just probably some feedback from us.
Is there an analysis at this point of the 2017 strategic plan and what hasn't been achieved from
That's
that?
what this is. These are all the, you know, we went, Chief Carrera and myself went through the 2017 plan, scratched off all the things that we accomplished, and these are all the ones that were left. And so some of these we've done some work on, but they aren't quite finished. Some of them we haven't even touched. And so that's why it was decided, okay, let's just, you know, extend it. At first it was extended, and then it was, you know, looking at it again for another year. And I think this one kind of goes back to what we were talking about is, it could easily be this, you know, this is, you know, it's responsible finance team, but this is more kind of a broad thing for the city, as in if the city plan and the fire department plan were kind of, you know, this is, for me, this is an example of how they didn't mesh together, because this isn't something the fire department can do on their own. This is something that would require more of the city, and that's probably part of the reason why it still hasn't been touched, is because it's one of those more long-range goals that needs more, you know, that is a citywide goal per se, more than just the fire department goal.
I just would hate for something like that to sit untouched, and then they start working on the mill site and we haven't integrated into the city plan what the fire department requires in a big, you know.
And I believe that, you know, with one of the things that we look at with our strategic plan is, while we've adopted these as the goals and objectives, you as a council have the right to say, you know what, this isn't in the fire department's purview. We don't need this in there. Let's move this into our own plan and use it for future planning down the road, to take it off of our plate and put it back into the restructure that potentially could happen.
Or perhaps, you know, say, hey, this is a high priority.
Sure.
And we need to move this one to the top.
Correct.
Because we don't want to go making big developments that don't fit with how the fire department works.
Yeah, because this is a guiding document, and, you know, like I said, I think for the first couple of years it was used quite heavily, and then COVID, it dropped off. And so, you know, some of these, that's why some of these things never came back, because ideally, you know, and I know it happened with some of the ones that were completed, is this would be something that we would be working on, where we'd be bringing it to the Public Safety Council saying, hey, this is one of the things that we want to work on. This is provided, you know, and bringing it up, taking it to the Public Safety Committee, taking it to the council, and we just never got there because of all the other things that that, you know, lovely 5-letter word did to us. I mean, that's my take on why we didn't get to some of these. And again, you know, like I said, because, you know, this was not necessarily a, you know, it wasn't taken past the fire department's strategic plan. It wasn't presented to the whole council to keep working on it. And we didn't do a good enough job on integrating.
Love your input about providing. Number two, I think that if not incorporated in, possibly we should add one that looks at reassigning resources and bringing fire prevention back to the fire department. But third, and I'm a little shocked at this one, are you telling me that you guys aren't proud of plans as a normal part of plan review?
No.
In the building?
No,
So
John.
no one's looking at entry egress.
John is. We're
John's
just,
doing all that.
he comes to us, from what I've experienced, is he will come to us with questions.
Right.
If he has a, and it hasn't happened so much because there hasn't been as much,
Yeah.
but he would come to us but there wasn't a formalized meeting where there was a plan review, but he would come to us and say, hey, I have this question. What would you prefer? Would you prefer a hammerhead on this driveway, or would you prefer a turnaround? So that kind of collaboration worked, but there wasn't a formalized plan review meeting that included the fire department. That was one of the gaps probably. And this is probably why a lot of this came, and you'll see another one. We grouped a couple other ones that talk specifically about that, as well as what you're saying about maybe possibly in the future bringing the plan review or the fire department plan review back into the fire department, so that we are a little bit more hands-on than we have been. So I think we're going to touch on that a little bit later. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
My request would be that we also make sure that police are included in those conversations as well, so that they can address any potential issues with security, especially as we're looking towards potentially doing affordable housing, things like that. They have to be involved.
I have a model from a previous city that I'll be discussing with Director Arteche.
And are there a list of, so for those of us who have no idea what you guys do for a living, is there a list of places where you guys are like, good Lord, how did they plan this street this way, or this parking lot this way, or this building this way? Are there things where if y'all had your druthers, you'd rather they did it different?
I would say that there is not a formal list, but there are definitely places that if we would have had more input, I think we would have done things a little bit differently in regards to access on the ridge, no parking signs, some things like that. As the actual buildings, I think John does a really good job and has done an excellent job, but I would say that if we had more of a voice, we might have been able to give a few more opinions on how it might have been easier for us for ease of access and things like that. But I mean, we have been, I mean, just the other day, he came to me and said, hey, you know, this, I think it was the, one of the buildings up off the center, one of the strip mall type places where they're saying, hey, they're going to move the fire panel. Do you guys want it here? Do you want it here? What makes sense? If he was going to do it one way and we said, no, that doesn't make sense. We wouldn't use it that way. Keep it, you know, he wanted to get rid of the panel and we're saying, no, we still wanted that enunciator panel. He said, oh, okay, sounds good. Sign it off and away he went. So he, you know, he does utilize us. It's just, you know, I think it could be fine tuned maybe.
See, it needs to be codified, not just a dependence on John Cooper.
Right, it needs to be a process, like I said, maybe a formal meeting or formal process as opposed to just relying on John to come and ask us.
Right.
Also, if there are points in the community that need to be relooked at with signage or whatever else, do bring them to public safety. We can talk about, we even have a signage in here. So if there's some things we can do quickly.
And he actually did. There was an issue that came up with the parking around the like on the apartment names, Echo Ridge Apartments, where the clubhouse is, kind of the main building, that circle. They were having a hard time getting in there. The garbage trucks were. We try to stay away from that one because we can't fit in there. The ones across from
Center, between Center and Douglas.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay.
And he actually went back to him and said, he just told me yesterday or this morning, actually, he said, I'm putting in new no parking sign. So it was brought to the it was brought to Public Works and it was brought to the fire department saying, hey, this is a problem. I looped him in, he talked about it, and then went back and said, yep, even though this is a private area, he worked it out so that we could put in new parking signs, so. It is happening.
Okay, is anybody are you keeping notes on everything that we're talking about?
Yep.
Good,
I got you.
okay, all right, great.
Do you want more roundabouts? Was that the other thing?
Hey, I do have one.
Future, right?
I do have one that I would like, brought up, and I don't know if it's not even in our, you know what? It's not even in our, my father-in-law got nailed going up past the tribal gas station. There's an illegal left-hand turn
Oh,
into
yeah.
that gas station that people make routinely. And, the guy just, you know, he was blocked perfectly by a car in front of him and just T-boned my 87-year-old or 88-year-old father-in-law. And there's no signage saying that that's not a legal left turn and it's just, you know, it's just obviously they've got like an island there. But anyway, enough about me.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, just to sum up what I'm hearing on this one is we want to keep it there, and I think it's gonna kind of tie into some other ones we're gonna see here in a minute, so, you know, we can bring it back up when those come up. You know, maybe we group them together into a new page that covers, you know, they could be handled with a couple different things together. The next one on there, secure city council approval allocating a percentage of year-end unexpected general fund revenue for fire department operations. You guys want to do that?
No.
I didn't think so.
No. Not-
Honestly, I mean, looking at that one, that was probably one that, you know, they were looking at different ways to fund. We've changed quite a bit, and I don't think that's necessarily something that's, I don't think it necessarily belongs in the fire department strategic plan. That's more of the city council one. So I would think that that would be one that we necessarily maybe don't need to keep in there, but again, this is, you know, I'm one voice, so. I don't think that's one that we're gonna change anytime soon in the fire department or the city, so.
The problem with it is that's not the way you want to do it,
Mhm.
because that's not regular funding, that's one-time monies. So you don't fund operations with one-time monies because it's not, it's ongoing costs, you don't have an ongoing revenue source. So it either needs to be fixed so that it's more sustainable, or it needs to go.
It's confusing.
I would think it just needs to go for now, because it's something that we're obviously gonna be talking about when we do a whole strategic plan for the city. So it seems to me that that could be one that we could take out of our plan for the.
Well, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's not gonna
you
happen,
know,
so
that-
no,
yeah.
no reason to spin our wheels on
Yeah, it's just gonna take up paper, but if it's in there.
What's next?
that. The next one here, the main goal, raise community and city government awareness of department fiscal budget pressures and needs related to growth. This is something that we've talked about. You've heard me talk about it. You heard Mark talk about it as maybe the next step when we're talking about staffing is secure additional staff for dedicated full-time basic life support transport unit, or, you know, like we were talking about. I think it could also be more that we are looking at having 2 rigs available versus 1. You know, kind of what I had been talking about, but you know, the last couple months. So I think when this was originally envisioned 5 years ago, they were talking about, you know, at that point, you know, we had just started fee for transport a couple years ago, and they were looking at, you know, with the city staffing, the funding, hey, maybe this is a new revenue source. If we transport more often, we'd be able to bring in more money. You know, we've talked about maybe we could partner with the hospital to transport people out of the hospital when we're not going on EMS calls. We can transport hospital patients. You know, those are some different things that could come out of this. So that's my take on what this one is. So
With that, also, there's been discussion about having a second, like, substation somewhere where you may have an 8-car located in a different part of the city.
right, when you look at where this station was put, it was put right slaps in the center of Olden. You know, it was the ridge in Old Town. It wasn't, there was no forethought put into response areas, risk, call volume. It was just put basically out of the floodplain in between the 2 cities as a compromise. I know Chief Carrera talked about, down the road is it would make sense to either move this station or have something, a second station or something closer to the ridge. Because when you look at those far reaches of the ridge, they're further than our response standard. And so having a satellite station somewhere, I mean, obviously, moving this station is, you know, probably not gonna be hard and feasible, but you could, if you did have a second unit, you could look at whether you're housing it somewhere else. Maybe if it was a daytime, it could be, you know, maybe they could run out of the police station during the day or something like that. There's different things that we could do besides necessarily building a new station, but that does kind of wrap into, if we ever do get more staffing or we're looking to have a second unit available, that might be, you know, there's enough room to do it out here, but when you look at response times, there might be some room to look at what makes sense for peak times, where, that kind of stuff. So I think it's kind of wrapped into that if we ever get to that point where we're trying to staff two vehicles.
Who is city government?
That's you, isn't it?
That would be, yeah,
I don't know.
I would think that would be I think that would be referring to the council.
Council? Is
Yeah.
that administration? Is that?
Having been sitting in that work group, that's what it was related to, is speaking directly to the council.
And at this time, when we first, I mean, 5 years ago, our call volume was probably still around 1,000,
About 1,100,
and now we're at 16.
an hour to 16.
So yeah, I guess, I mean, I think this one, you know, it'd be a question of whether we want to change it at all, leave it the way it is, and continue to keep working toward that goal.
Yeah. It's almost like.
Call volume is moving around.
No, and there is another one, you know, like I said, these are grouped into goals, but there is another one a little bit later that talks about just staffing in general. So again, we could maybe tie some of the, you know, if we're making a new document, we can, you know, I just cut and pasted from the old one, but we can group these into similar categories so that, you know, maybe there's 3 that point to needing more staffing. They could be together so that they are looked at and not separated like this. But this was just how it was organized the first time.
So it's kind of like around assessing, you know, infrastructure, equipment, response times. That's something. I think it could be fleshed out a little bit more so that we understand what it is by looking at it.
Okay, so we'll see when we get, I think there's some other
Okay.
points coming up. And like I said, maybe what we can do is after we have
Yeah.
today, is we can kind of put this together in a new document and then see if that makes sense to where there's some of the, you know, like I said, maybe grouping some of these together that are similar. So this one was under the same goal. Implement a fee for service or agencies subsidized regional training center program. This was back when we were talking, you know, we were standalone by ourselves, had our own training program. We were looking at ways to partner with some agencies, look at ways to build. I know that at one point they were talking about, you know, some of the land that the city had. Maybe it could be utilized as a training center for some regional training. I think since then, we've kind of gone down the path that we're at now, where we're working as part of the consortium. And, you know, they have other facilities. I think eventually they might be looking for some places to have more training centers.
They are looking for another north satellite as well as an east satellite.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be necessarily something that we would be, I think when this one was first brought up, it was, you know, for our usage or to be the main, the host agency, where I think now the way that we structured our department and we structured our training, it would be, you know, there is still possibly a way to use some of the city land if there is some, or some of our area to have it. But I don't know if, you know, implementing a fee or, you know, we necessarily be funding it. Would be a case of the consortium would be doing it as a piece.
Yeah, and just some of the background on that one, the fee for service was being able to open it to outside agencies to come in and utilize the training ground, charge them a nominal fee just to cover our expenses overall. Or if we utilize any of our staff to come in and teach some of the classes, Or if we brought in outside instructors, then we would be able to utilize that facility to then draw some funds back to the department, potentially into a fund that could roll back into our training and continue to build up our training program in a larger fashion.
Were there any concerns with liability or exposure to the city for having this on property? Having folks come in and do dangerous things?
Mildly dangerous. Just chainsaw.
Normally, it's normally pool members that are doing that, so we're all kind
So we're all
of
in support
covered, so
anyway.
it never really got,
Do we need?
I've never run into that in any of the places I've been involved.
Honestly, I think like I said, I think our priorities have changed to where, again, what I was talking about earlier, I think we have bigger fish to fry than trying to expand by building new. I mean, I think part of the original idea too is that they're saying if we built a training center, that could be the second station. But it's not gonna be anywhere up on the ridge. So I think this is one of those where we have done some of this. We've held, we upgraded this room. We added this, this thing. We're still hoping to get some other upgrades in the next year or two, where we have held some classes here, where we've utilized, some of our instructors. We've got free tuition for our people to attend the class and used our people to put the class on, but we've collected a fee for it.
So maybe adjust this to reflect that. Right? Or is there more that you want to do in that vein that would make a better goal for the next strategic plan?
Yeah, when you look at the part of the overall goal being awareness of department fiscal budget pressure needs, I don't think we're going to be ever doing anything that is going to relieve some of the pressure in the budget that we've been talking about.
No, you're not.
We're not going to do anything big enough to handle that. I think we could, like Jake was saying, we could do some things that could benefit, either bring in money or bring in classes for our people to benefit from. But I don't think it's going to be something that we're going to be subsidizing and building a training facility based, to take some of the pressure to bring in money. We're not going to be, that's not going to pencil
But
out.
the goal of furthering the education of firefighters in the region is a good one. And if it can be done in such a way that it's not going to drain city resources to do it, and that to the extent that you need to say improve this room in order to do that better,
Right.
and you can raise the funds to do that by providing those classes. I mean, that's a good thing. It increases the abilities of the overall firefighter in the region and improves this facility. A goal like that, I could see as being a good one to include, just because it's attainable, it's positive, and it's noble. So
I would say minus the fee for service, we've hit most of that goal by entering into the consortium. We've stabilized the cost per training, thus creating that regional standardization across us, Eastside, Bertha, Fall City, Duval, every one of our partners in the consortium. So we've stabilized that cost over a long period of time based on a contract that we have with the consortium. And we still have our training facility available. I mean, all but implementing a fee, we've still provided awareness for the fiscal budget pressure.
It's true.
So you're recommending that we strike it?
I'd say it's, net.
I'd say, it could be a case that we strike it in the way it is related to this goal, but it could be something that we're adding further down the line when we're talking about fire department goal. This is one of the ones that it was, responsible finance team. It was one of those bigger goals, but this could be brought back as something else to, continue our, however we word it, continue our firefighter education and bring quality training. However we word it, we could put that back in there to continue to foster that, holding classes and increasing our training.
Selfishly, as the training officer, I'd tell you, I would love to just be able to have the training grounds. If you guys allowed us to build a training tower out at Public Works, I would love it, because the crews would be out there every day doing something. And they wouldn't have to travel as far to go get some of those trainings done.
Well, we're looking at possibly getting some land under some power lines, I think. At some point.
It's only about
You don't
what,
wanna
10
do
feet wide,
training
20 feet wide, right?
It's not- it's
Water,
not- it's not
power,
that big.
yeah, that-
Smoke and power lines.
But to pair back to what Bill was saying, realistically, I think with our partnerships in the region, we're realizing higher quality, better training, and the fact that we're interacting with people we didn't interact with before, and as a region, we're all speaking the same language, doing the same tasks, and not doing it 15 different ways. I would agree with Bill that, while it would be a nice to have, it's not a need, and I would recommend strike.
So, but to his point, a great deal of this has been accomplished, you know, and to what extent has it been accomplished? What hasn't been accomplished, and how have the goals of the fire department changed since this was written? Those kinds of things would be great to know in just your reflection on 2017 strategic plan and the writing of the new one.
I think this is though written like it's a profit center and it's not a profit center.
Right.
So yeah, so reflect that in the,
But I think the spirit of the regional training stuff is incredibly valuable and is great use of resources. And that's later on, right, in the plan.
And so you brought up personal liability. Normally where the liability comes in with training centers is years later when they discover some chemical.
Yeah.
And what the fire department's been spraying all around next to the river. Yeah, public
Yeah.
works.
The lawsuit that he said has right now in this spot for the
Correct.
foam in the water
So,
system.
That's what the
You're not wrong.
liability lies.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Okay, we can look at maybe, you know, like I said, striking this one, but adding something further down the road about continuing some of our partnerships and continuing the training consortium and looking for ways to grow that opportunity.
completely non-foam based training.
Believe it or not, that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Okay,
Do you guys get in trouble for putting fires out?
no,
With foam? No.
Okay, right. So you don't get dinged for that, you know.
No, where the foam issues are is when it gets into the waterways, but it also dates back to when, I don't want to call them foam parties because that's not what it was, but the departments would go out and they would fill the parking lot with foam as part of their training, just to be able to application and then reapplication, and then firefighters may have shenanigans at some point that ensue inside of the foam, and that's where it is today.
never.
It does
Like
not happen.
firefighters gone wild kind of thing?
We
There
used
you
to
go.
make one of our parks look like it snowed by
Yeah.
falling all the trees.
You've been there, done that. Okay, this is under the same goal, but obtain a light duty multifunctional fire suppression rapid response vehicle. Where this came in had to do with, you know, as you know, the different terrains in the city, the heights, sometimes it's snowing, sometimes it isn't, getting our fire trucks around, our tight streets, does it make sense to have something different? I think that this one could be modified or ties into some of the things that we've talked about, our upcoming apparatus needs. And looking at what our next purchase is gonna be. Is it going to be a engine just like the one we have on order? Is it going to be an engine and possibly some other kind of vehicle to handle that? You know, there's been talk about wanting to increase our wildland capabilities. Maybe it means that we buy another engine and some kind of wildland vehicle that could be not only used for wildland, but it could also be used in snowstorms because it has four-wheel drive and we could get it up into the upper reaches of the ridge.
Or staff it for wind events.
Wind events, yeah.
Cut down trees and have Bill work with us.
Trees don't fall
Right,
down.
yeah.
So, I mean, I think this kind of, this by itself, I don't think is, in my opinion, I don't think is enough. I think we could probably make it maybe a little bit more broader to talk about studying, the needs of the department, the next purchase, however we phrase it to encompass what we were just talking about is what is going to be the next purchase for the department, or I'm not sure how we could word it, but
Our mutual aid and have somebody else buy it for us.
There's DNR programs that help fund, gently used brush
Right.
trucks and
Yeah.
gently used
Yeah.
gently.
Well, but the upside of that is they're immediately available. We don't have to wait a year and a half or two to get them. And they're cheaper.
So could it be a surplus multifunctional fire apparatus then?
It could be, I mean, there's things out there that you can buy. I mean, you don't want to buy somebody else's problem when you're looking at maintenance. I mean, people are usually getting rid of rigs for a reason. But that being said, if you're talking about, you know, like I said, if we're combining this into what is the risk for the city, what is the biggest need when we're talking about wildland, and we know how, you know, we talk about where we're kind of going with that and where the climate is going. That makes more sense. And maybe it's a case of we're looking at buying something that's used that will tide us over for a couple of years that could be used to make money going on deployments to help save money for a newer rig down the road. I mean, these are all kind of things that, you know, I think as we progress more towards focusing on some wildland things, those are things that we would be bringing to the Public Safety Committee, you know, as we move forward. Part of this discussion of, again, what is our next apparatus needs?
Well, and we might be able to, if we focus where we would get it, not on a city that's maybe trying to get rid of a problem truck, but maybe it's, you know, just a city that's closing. They're just not going to be a city anymore. Somebody like that. Does that happen ever? No.
Hey, Bill, you're really, I mean, you're a wildland guy, you and Robert. If you had to choose type 3, type 6, so a little bit bigger 4-wheel drive, a little bit smaller, more maneuverable, what would you choose?
I'm going type 6 every day of the week. So type 6 is a smaller unit. It's typically on a F450, F550 size chassis.
Pickup truck size.
And you can mount some water, a pump, and a myriad of equipment. Chainsaws during weather events, extra hose during fire season, staff it as a quick response vehicle. I don't know if any of you guys have a CDL, but driving 44,000 pounds in snow is what I would call terrifying. It's very uncomfortable and makes me nervous. Yeah. So having that ability to maybe even reduce that liability of rolling a 44,000 pound vehicle into anything. And now these concepts too, they aren't, I wish we could say we thought of them on our own. Duval and Fall City and other small departments have been doing the same thing. They buy a small rig, they mow it once or twice. It brings in some money. You buy a better rig, you buy a newer one, and you upgrade it. Helps bolster the program. Essentially, that unit will self-sustain as long as you utilize it appropriately for a very long time.
And you'll see with those same agencies in the wintertime, they deploy that before they send a full-size fire engine out on the road. You know, $1 million rig versus $150,000 or $200,000 rig. And the risk management piece of it just makes sense in the snow and wind and storm events.
I mean, we've even used it as a pseudo BLS unit. Like if somebody is a stable patient, they just need to get to a definitive care, put them in the back of this brush truck, which is just a regular truck, drive them down to the 8-car that might not be as capable. Fortunately, we've gotten ahead of that by having 4-wheel drive vehicles, but provides options. Well, we love having our plans A, B, C through Z. That's kind of our thing.
You know, during the last big snow event that we had down in Falls City, Station 87 from North Bend had to bring their brush truck to get to the fire at this top of this hill because nobody else could access it. And it took a long time for anybody to be able to get in there. And we ended up with firefighters getting injured and going up and down ice. And it just, it's dangerous. It's simply dangerous. So the multifunction that comes with the light duty vehicle, it is, I mean, the pros far outweigh the cons and the cost.
So Chief, on engine 1, once that gets moved to the second position, how much longer do you think we really could nurse out of that? I mean, it's obviously not a piece.
Our main 155, our main one right now, it's on its second motor. We had a partial rebuild of the motor a couple years ago. We had a full rebuild of it, $100,000 rebuild of it a year ago because it died on us in the snow. And so in theory, the motor piece of it, I think will get us there. We're worried about some of the other, I mean, we've put a lot of money into that thing over the last couple of years, keeping it running, the pump, all the other systems on it.
We're on our third PTO.
Yeah, I think when it goes to the backup, it's not gonna be used as much.
Right.
When we eventually get 2 new rigs within a couple years of each other, we're gonna do a better job of rotating them. You know, every 6 months, we're gonna rotate the main one to the back one and drive it for a couple. So we don't get this, because right now, the main rig has 120,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
Something like that, and the backup only has 60. The one that's going away is the one that's only has 60, but
But
it's
the
falling
part's
apart too.
falling.
Yeah, that one's falling apart too, but
And when you look at this, the NFPA standard 1900, it identifies 10 years as a front line, 10
Right.
years as a reserve on the outside. And, you know, those
As
are
the
for,
maximum.
those are for the slow maximum use type departments. You're seeing fire engines rotate out about 6 years at a time right now.
so will it make it till we get the next one? Probably, but it, you know, it's not like it's gonna fall apart tomorrow, but it's not gonna make it another 10 years.
Right. Okay,
Um,
that's cool.
So yeah, I guess it's, you know, I mean, the way it's written kind of encompasses, you know, especially when you look at the outcome there, it encompasses all of what we're talking about. So I don't even know if we necessarily need to change it. I think it stays the way it is, because I think it's a discussion point as we move forward the next year, the next 2 years, as we have this discussion about what we're gonna be doing for the next rig, or even if we're not waiting till the next rig, if we're looking at, like you said, if we come up with a proposal for, you know, 25,000 or 50,000, get a used one to start building that. I mean, those are discussions I think we're gonna wanna have probably in the next year or two, because I do think that we're gonna be pivoting more towards wildland being the biggest risk in the city as opposed to the river. I think that's the direction I wanna go. And I think that makes the most sense when you look at the risk analysis for the city and how, you know, what's gonna really impact, you know, yes, if somebody, you know, passes away in the river, yes, that is gonna be an impact, yes, that's gonna be horrible, but a wildfire going through and impacting 1,000 people versus one person, you know, that's what I'm saying. It seems like, you know, the amount of calls that we've had in the city based on Swiftwater, most of our calls are outside helping our partners. That's still important. We don't wanna get rid of it, but I think there's some other places we might wanna turn our energies toward, that wildland piece as we move forward, so.
I like it.
All right?
Right.
No, I keep moving. These are ones that we were kind of doing, and these are more internal ones for us, so implement a statistical-based approach and evaluating all department programs to help in determining value and cost effectiveness. We've done this with the accreditation. We could do a better job of this. We do our annual program reviews for a lot of our programs that are in accreditation. Each year, we talk about them as a group. The fire department leadership team talk about what the goals are, you know, what we've accomplished over the years, what we're gonna do next. So we're doing this to a degree, but we could be doing a better job of it. So I personally think this one just stays as an internal one that we keep working on. As we get some of these things off our plate and we look toward our next accreditation period, what we need to work on. This is probably gonna be one of the things that's gonna come out of that, is we need to be doing a better job of using data and statistics to approach what we're doing and making sure that what we're doing is effective. And we're getting the most bang for our buck, I guess. The next one there talks about establish city community focus groups. I think we did this before COVID, because I know we had town halls and we used to engage the public. And we do that, and then, you know, like everything else, it kind of died off when that went away.
There's some for the lithium ion.
Yep, we did do that one, that is correct. We had that little one for that one. You know, part of this will be as we engage the community in the next strategic plan for the city and the fire department, that'll be that, but you know, trying to engage the community more in the off years and trying to really make sure that we're providing what people are asking for.
COVID has been not a friend for the outreach efforts and trying to figure out social media and how to reach people in ways that,
Yeah.
we have hurdles today.
So, I mean, I think this one is just one that's, you know, these are 2 internal department ones that we're gonna keep working on. I don't necessarily think we need to change anything. I think we just need to make sure that, you know, as we're moving forward, we're focusing on these again, once we get our heads above water with some of the stuff we're working on right now.
I would even say for the second goal there, that they're less reactive type of engagements and more
More
proactive.
proactive.
Obviously, that's takes a significant amount of effort and time, but like the lithium ion ones, like, yes, that's a valuable tool to be able to gather people and send a unified message, but if we're only sending out a message of, hey, this is a PSA, and then we're gonna go quiet until something else pops up again. Being in the position I am, watching trends on social media and how different departments engage and cities engage in their social media, if it's purely reactionary, you don't get that outreach. It becomes, you're just talking into a void. So.
There's something that I've long been concerned about is, especially at Panorama Apartments, is if there was some sort of catastrophe and people had to get out of there, there is just, you know, not enough points of egress out of that complex. And it has always terrified me since before it was built. If there was an emergency and that complex had to be evacuated, how do people know what to do? How does it not just become, you know, general admission at a Who concert and people just getting trampled? And is there any kind of education that goes along with, and you know, places like Panorama, Woodlands, you know,
Well, and I'll try to field this one and tie into what Bill's talking about. You know, Bill mentioned about being proactive versus reactive in our messaging. And one of the challenges that we run into, and this kind of goes back to some of the other pieces that we've talked about with John Cooper's position, if he retires, and bringing the fire marshal back in, and how can we bring the fire marshal and our risk reduction programs together, which is traditionally done in a fire department, to where you have somebody who's dedicated that when they're not doing inspections or not engaging business owners or plan review, things like that, or having another firefighter that's engaged in public education activities and reaching out to those communities and spending time there. So it comes down to resources to be able to make that proactive messaging happen. As Chief Bailey alluded to, you know, we're running 1,600 calls a year right now, and the balance is tipped now of being operational versus being proactive in what we do. And I don't believe the capacity is there. So do we want to? Yes. Do we have the resources available for it? I don't know that we do.
So I guess on that point, I mean, if one firefighter was added to the FTE, that would address either training or volunteer stuff or community outreach. I mean, what would it look like? And I guess that's probably the thing that council would need to have.
I think it's two separate things. If we're talking, I think our biggest need, and again, there's one that talks about staffing a little bit, but I think our biggest need is operational right now. What we talked about, our bench. I think when you're talking about some of these other programs, that's when you're looking at some of things like right now, our Jessica, our administrative assistant, is part-time. And it was vision when it went part-time that eventually down the road, maybe that would go back to being a full-time, and they would be part of the group that would be working on some of this community action. She was hired with that in idea because she had a background in community education and work. That was kind of the idea when that occurred, because we don't have, you know, you need those dedicated daytime people to be working on that, which is separate from the operational. If we just are adding 1 or 2 or 3 people, I think that that's operationally to be able to free up, you know, yes, the operation crews are doing things on their off time, you know, on their downtime. They're doing fire inspections, they're doing some of that stuff, but it's not their primary focus. Whereas these people would be hired to be their primary focus. It'd be flop. They would be able to respond possibly on calls if needed, but their primary focus is day-to-day operations, or not operations, day-to-day administrative stuff as opposed to day-to-day operational stuff.
And many of the fire departments that have positions like that, if they don't have a full community risk reduction division, They have firefighters that they promote into a position that then becomes their focus. They sit there for 2 years, 3 years at a time on a cycle, and it gives them opportunity to be able to engage in different ways, professional development.
So yeah, I think it's one of those things as we're growing, how we figure out how to handle that stuff. To get back to where we can, because, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were a lot more proactive because we had the time to do it. When I was on shift, we had the time to go out and solicit people to do classes for. We'd go out and look for opportunities to go to all the classrooms for Fire Prevention Week, to do tours on this stuff. Whereas right now, we've kind of closed shop up a little bit because we just don't have the bandwidth.
Okay, so here's one other thing is that it'd be interesting for us to know number of responses back in 2017 versus number of responses today and ratio of staff to those responses, because it may help us with prioritizing budget in the future. Or when we go, if we go out to the voters, right, okay, these are the things we want to accomplish.
Yeah, the number of calls, we can easily, I can pull that up right now, because that's part of what, that's on our budget, that's on the thing that I provide you guys every quarter.
Yeah, no, we're 1385 as of today, yes.
The staffing hasn't changed. Staffing is the same time, actually, the only position that we've added would have been my position as the deputy chief. We had an administrative chief, and then right about this time is when we added, we brought me off the line down into the office to add one more daytime person. So that's probably the only staffing change that we've done. Otherwise, it's stayed the same. It's been 12 people since.
Yeah, 2017, we were running right around 1,200 calls a year, and we're on track for 1,600, just like we were last year.
1,600 with no weather events.
With no weather, I mean, everything that we did this year was not, there was no major
No
catastrophes that affected it. So.
Well, give us time.
Yeah, it's the end is nigh.
Wasn't the ice storm last year in
It was
December
24th.
Bill's first day active.
But it's El
My
Nino
first
this
day
year,
as
right?
supervisor.
So.
Railroad
Wow.
for 40
Wow.
hours.
It's a good day.
Don't promote him anytime in the next few months.
I was the only department head in the city. Everybody said, yeah, you're it.
Yeah,
Yep.
you lived here basically for a while, didn't you, in the EOC?
Yeah.
This is one of those ones that we're going back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I think this ties into long range plan of possibly bringing that person, that fire marshal capability back into the fire department. And I think some of these are going to be able to kind of tie together, just like Jake was saying. Historically, for agencies or accredited agencies too, is that fire marshal is also the person that is the accreditation manager or the person that's in charge of the community risk reduction, because it all kind of ties together. That's why fire prevention and public education are tied together right now, is because they, when you look at accreditation, they're tied together because they're, they do the same thing. By doing public education, you're helping out your fire prevention piece. So
I would recommend rewriting that then, because when I read that, what that's talking to me about is implementing interurban standards into the development, so that you have, the screens over the vents on the houses and everything, so you start to wildland protect the housing stock in this area. I mean, that's what I'm reading.
I mean, I got ahead of myself here.
Okay.
There's so many of them. Just yeah, I mean.
And I think on a lot of these, they're ongoing, so maybe the only change needs to be the first word, where it changes to continue. Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I remember correctly from our original work plan, this came on this actually came on the heels of the July 4th fire off Fairway with the cedar shake roof, and talking about design standards for appropriate roof coverings and things like that in these areas that we have potential for fire.
Do you guys just drive down the street sometimes and go safe house, tinderbox, safe house, safe house?
Maybe in an internal dialogue, we never say that out loud.
And I don't know if I'd say necessarily houses, but there are definitely neighborhoods that have us more concerned than others based on, just like you were talking about the panorama. I mean, I would say the access out of there is a lot better than some of our neighborhoods. When you talk about Crestview has one entrance in and out, whereas at least Panorama has two entrances in and out.
Which one's Crestview? Which one's that?
Crestview would be the one that's off of the end of the lake,
And the
Eagle
Eagle
Lake.
Lake.
Eagle Lake. So
Oh, yeah.
it looks like just a big oval, but there's only one way in and out.
Yes.
There's multiple neighborhoods that
Yeah.
are like that where there's only
My
street.
daughter has a really good friend that lives
Yeah.
right in there.
And fortunately, if you take a look at the DNR wildland maps and their predicting standards, they actually identify that as a very low threat in there because of where it's down in a fairly wet area. So that one neighborhood, I'm not horribly.
Yeah, I
concerned
just,
about, but it's a good
in and out.
example.
That's what I can think of. Yeah.
And if we got people leaving there, it would be very difficult for our resources to go in.
Right. That's what worries me about Panorama is how do you get resources in if everybody's coming out and open a gate?
Louder.
Well,
Everybody's gonna go out that way too. Paratime.
Okay, so yeah, you got those about possibly looking at changing the wording on these, okay.
And was that just on the number one, or are we looking?
I think that was,
It was on off.
there's a couple of them that, when we look at keeping them, we need to look at making instead of like that one, creating instead of,
So this is everything under 2A, looking at.
Are we going forward with the Firewise programming? Is that?
I, honestly, we haven't done, I mean, Bill,
I was the last person to touch that program pre-COVID. We put out,
A bunch of references to it in the CD docs.
Okay, that's more of a.
So I was-
question for Emily, then.
Okay. I was hoping that there was some forward movement.
yeah, Chief Guerra put a big emphasis on it. In my second year here, we ended up putting out a survey that would try to capture people's level of engagement they'd be willing to participate in for Firewise.
Yeah.
Based solely on the fact that it is a community-driven program. It's not department-funded, staffed, or even run after it's initially set up.
Yeah.
In the areas that we identified that had
Moderate to
the
high.
most potential, and I say the most because it all had low potential. I think we had 30 people that were willing to participate in. And so based on that, we put things on the back burner. We still have documentation and documents ready to go and contacts at DNR. Based on people's level of engagement, it was not going to be a feasible plan at that point.
And what is Firewise? What was it?
The ability to look at a neighborhood or group of homes and proactively prepare for any sort of wildland interface issue.
Yeah.
So trimming trees back off the house.
Right.
Maintaining your shrubbery, watering your lawns, being in contact with your arborist, make sure there's nothing that could fall in and onto your house that could be burning. So having essentially a 30-foot buffer all the way around your house. But again, if there's DNR says, hey, we will help provide, like, we'll send a dumpster to your location. We'll put it right in your cul-de-sac. You all have to do the labor, right? They're not going to send labor out to do it. And we can help send messages and facilitate some of that interaction, but when it comes down to the work that needs to be done by the community members. And if there's no buy-in, right, it's a hard start. I mean, it's a cold start for sure.
The places you see the Firewise programs the most are east of the Cascades. There are a few Firewise programs here. I believe the Lake Alice homeowners
East side
has
has
one.
has a
Yeah.
couple areas.
Up in the Riverbend area, they have one. So there's areas here, but largely on the east side of the state. And there are some fire departments that help lead the process. But they specifically go out and get grant funding to hire seasonal employees, and they utilize that as their training before they ship them off to go staff their brush trucks for the season.
Yeah.
So they get them out there clearing brush, with defensible space around the homes and things. But like Lieutenant Wisham said, it is a community driven program, and without the support of the community, it's not feasible for our organization to be able to do those.
Yeah. So I'm on the advisory council for King Conservation District. I know that they've been working with it as well and putting in some additional options to do it.
And our city arborist, Phil Bennett, is very knowledgeable on the
Yeah.
Firewise program and much, I mean, he's a proponent of it. And if he could go Firewise this whole city today, he would. But I don't know.
I don't
if
think
it's
he's
something we'd be able to do.
He's not trying hard enough.
Building fences. are-
Let's put it here,
Yeah.
Phil needs to try.
Bill needs to try harder. It's in the
Try
notes.
harder, Bill.
Try
Yeah, you read, get that note in there.
Oh, it's in the notes.
Okay.
This one I just brought, the one that we talked about earlier, I just kind of put it together on this slide because I thought they kind of worked together. This is what I talked about. This next one here, look at the bottom one, is establishing a credible and team-oriented presence in city development, building plan review. That it kind of ties into the one that we looked at earlier.
Mhm.
As,
I'll take care of that.
Okay,
So Mike's in charge of 2A.
yeah. Okay, so this one talks about regionalization, mutual aid, things like that, collaborating with our partners. So this one had, just like you're saying, had better words, continue collaboration with key neighboring agencies and supporting continuity and training, operations and dispatch. I remember when Chief Carter brought this one up, I thought that we could say that some of the stuff we've been doing, we had kind of completed it, but, we kept it in there, what we brought to it, because there could still be more. Obviously, we've done it in regards to training. We've done it training operations and dispatch, but it's not just something you can do once and say that it's over. So I guess that would be my input on this one. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts. I mean, we're constantly working on this. We're still working on this.
This might be one of those ones that might be nice to keep in there. And I
Yeah.
say that only because especially with how we have our agreements and our collaborations with all of our partner agencies, it's always a continuing effort. If we don't actively seek out better
Yeah.
ways to do things with our neighbors, we're going to lose it. 'Cause they may move a different direction than we will, and if we don't match step, or they match step with us, then we're gonna be losing what we've worked so hard for. I think we are doing a good job. I think we have the best relationships with all of our partners we've ever had.
Right. At least operationally, we have done fantastic.
Huge
to build
leaps and
the
bounds.
relationships.
Yeah.
Have there been
And-
times when we didn't have good relationships?
Oh, yeah.
That'll be an offline conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a rough.
Wow.
It mainly had to do in the beginning when we, the Snoqualmie was kind of looked at as the jewel, the moneymaker for East Side Fire and Rescue. And so back when we were formed in '99, that created a lot of hard problems, a lot of hard feelings. And so for a couple of years, we didn't work together hardly at all, unless we had to. And then I would say there has been some times where it's kind of gone back and forth with administration, dealing with mutual aids, things like that, where we've kind of butted heads. But really I'd say in the last 5 years or so, even before COVID, we were starting to work together. And I can attribute a lot of that too, I think, to our training. We're spending a lot more time going out and training with our partners and meeting them and talking to them, as opposed to being siloed and taking care of our own stuff. So yeah, I think it's just one of those that's continuing, that we have to keep working on it and look for more opportunities to collaborate with our neighbors. Because the more we collaborate, the more familiar you are with them, the more the operations are aligned. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, when it hits the fan, you know exactly what the guy next to you is going to do, even if he's wearing a different patch. And that's hugely important for our
So
people.
firefighters are almost like people.
Weird, right?
Getting close.
Almost. Number two, is there more work to be done in that area?
I think the work is not necessarily with the city of North Bend. I think the work is with a different neighbor.
Yeah, I don't think, East Side North Bend is pretty well ingrained in East Side. I don't
Say,
see
I don't
that
think they're
changing.
going
I don't think there's ever any going back on that one. Maybe down the road, but I think it's pretty well ingrained that they're gonna be part of East Side, and that's not gonna change.
But this is
Well-established
police
system.
service.
It says,
Expansion of the contract to include fire.
we provide
got it.
police forms, so why should,
Okay.
maybe we could provide fire.
No.
So,
Okay,
I'll say I
No,
right
but
it.
possibility of providing services to the casino.
Right.
Or working with Fall City.
So maybe just revise it to state that explore expansion of police services agreement to include provision of all emergency services to neighbors. Or something along
I think there's another one that talks about looking for regional partners.
Yeah.
In general, not necessarily tying it to police services.
Explore all opportunities for public safety services
Yeah,
agreements.
I like that.
It's not bad.
That's why he's,
Nearby cities and nations.
okay. And I think you like it, the outcome is, you know, the more you start working with groups, the easier it makes it to be to expand as you go, but. This is what I was talking about. The next one was more about joining regional, looking at regionalization, whether it's a fire authority, whether it's contracting, whether it's joint, whatever it is. This was the one that was pointing toward regionalized fire service.
I would leave it.
Leave it the way it is. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's anything that we've ever not said that we're going to look at. I mean, we're all about efficiencies and making sure that we're doing things the best way possible. So yeah, I think it stays. Good news is there's only a couple more.
Okay.
Trying to.
That clock's wrong, by the way.
Yeah, it's not 9:30, it's not 9:20. That's.
If you stay a little longer, my kids might be sleeping.
We're here for you.
Well done.
Not too much longer.
Yeah.
You got a better
Right.
You are the great.
Oh, are you?
Pushed into a 72 here, yeah.
Let me just tell you how many are last week and decide if you want to keep going.
These guys will get excited if you want to do some extended.
1,
training
2,
stuff, AED,
3.
When I'm
CPR.
on the clock, I'm available for
There's 5 left.
anything. AEDs, cutting cars apart, whatever we gotta do. We'll do it.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I might
we
hang
don't
out.
get to do it very often though.
Good chicken.
She
This
loves
one
the
here talks about feasibility models and cost effectiveness of using part-time staffing. Well, although it's not a bad idea, I think the way the fire service is right now, part-time staffing has been greatly, what's the right word, has been overused, as in there's not a lot of people out there because there's been so much hiring. So a lot of our partners that have not closed, but like Snoqualmie County that rely mainly on part-time are struggling to get people. So us starting a new program, I think is going to be very difficult to get any kind of traction at all.
I would second that. Unfortunately, the volunteer programs, the part-time programs in King County are not happening. Major departments are removing funding and they're shifting gears because they're finding that the revolving door is just too much to maintain. And we're I would say not far behind, but in that same sense, you know, Mountain View Fire, we just wiped out the budget. We have 6 volunteers left on the books. Enumclaw's program is down. Skyway's program is down. Burien isn't taking anybody more time. I mean, it's across the board. You're seeing volunteers and part-time programs just disappearing. So it's hard to be able to maintain those programs and look at the part-time programs because they just.
I'm not, we're not talking about getting rid of our volunteers by any means. That's
no,
not what
that's-
we're talking about. We were
well,
talking about a new program to, when we were talking part-time, because right now we don't have any fire volunteers.
Well,
We're
some
just down to
volunteers are leaving to take fake jobs.
Big jobs.
Yeah, you got one of them going into city council or something. So
I was like, I'm intrigued to hear what it's.
Big jobs. I like big jobs. We're big jobs.
Here, go ahead,
Catherine.
Pat.
he's muted.
I think she
Can
you can unmute yourself. Go ahead, Kat.
Okay, I just wanted to say that historically for our volunteer corps, which has been implemented for, well, since things basically started, Chief, wasn't it back around 99, you started taking in volunteers, or was it shortly thereafter?
They had, yeah, we, as soon as we started with volunteers, the
Yeah.
newest version of the department, yeah, they had them here years before, but yeah.
But so the thing that we commonly see is that we get two types of volunteers. We get the, you know, community involved folks that have a profession that are just looking to be, you know, provide service, help their community, and are in it for a much longer haul. And then the other, probably third to half of those are also of our volunteers that we recruit are looking for career jobs in a you know, full-time fire department. And so the problem we've seen is really you get people all trained up and then they transfer out, you know, to another department, which great for them, but it certainly is our loss for the community. So it's trying to keep, and we've done this forever. It's this ebb and flow of folks where we'll just get up to our numbers and then we lose, or life events happen, you know, and people need to time off or, you know, focus on families or whatever is happening. We still do have some of our hardcore volunteers, Robert and myself included in that group, but we but you know, so but we do have you know, other very committed long-term volunteers as well. So you know, I don't want you to write off our volunteer group quite yet, and which I know you're not doing, but you know, we just need to continue our active recruitment out there, because there's people that are very interested in serving the community in this capacity.
I'm thinking, when you're looking at this one, I'm thinking the part-time firefighter isn't gonna happen right now, but I could see us maybe changing this to reflect currently what we're doing with our volunteer people and talking about maintaining, expanding, you know, whatever words we use to talk about, you know, the fact that what we currently have is what we have, is not going away. But maybe that's, you know, adding part-time EMS people, because, you know, that's something down the road. If we had enough people that were willing to work shifts, you could have you know, like we talked before about having a BLS transport unit. It could be a case of, we have the firefighters that we're hiring, career firefighters, but we could also have more, and we've tried to do it with, you know, our numbers are really low right now, but we've tried to have the volunteers sign up 2 at a time, so they could transport and leave the career staff here to handle the subsequent call. So I think this one could maybe be modified to point more toward, you know, looking at how to expand our EMS portion.
I would challenge you that you guys are actually reading firefighter in there somewhere, because if you actually read the sentence, firefighter's not in there, and I don't think it needs to be changed at all.
That is true. Part-time, you know, when it was created, you know, part-time in our mind refers to a part-time firefighter, but I understand what you're saying. It doesn't say.
I would challenge you that you met this with your admin,
With our,
your Jessica.
oh, I see. Good, yeah, I mean, that wasn't.
She's technically part.
Yeah,
part-time.
she technically is part-time, that was not, was
It wasn't
intended, but.
intended, but it counts.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it could be just left the way it is, understanding that, you know, like it says, explore the feasibility models and cost effectiveness. The feasibility is those people that I was talking about, those firefighters might not be out there, but like Kat was talking about, there could be those EMS providers out there. There could be, I mean, we have a lot of people that want to work more than they are right now.
Sure.
We just don't have enough of them. We're trying to get them trained up, trying to get them drivers and things like that, but.
And of course, we have the pieces with FMLA that we have to deal with the 20% rule with volunteers versus part paid, and what we can and can't pay them. So we have to be cautious on the fine line that we walk with the hours that they work versus the compensation. So, and then of course, with the union as well.
I don't know how many retired teachers we have around, but maybe you develop your outreach program with retired teachers that want to volunteer.
Well, and you're seeing some of the programs that have morphed that are still alive. Some of them are moving into what's called Fire Corps, which is more support-based, kind of throwback to the auxiliary programs that used to exist with fire departments, where they're there to support the mission, but not be the suppression or the EMS or, not being directly involved with emergency itself. So those programs do exist. And we have some of that available through CERT already. We have almost no interaction with CERT at the fire level. But there are programs available that do sustain those kinds of things.
This was on, back in the beginning of the year, this was on my, my work plan to work on this year, in January. That was, by this time, we were supposed to have a whole presentation to bring to the council as to what we're gonna do. And as you know, things went, and so it never happened. But yeah, I mean, leave it the way it is. I mean, that doesn't say next year we're not gonna be trying to figure out, the problem still is gonna exist, staffing, however we're gonna peel that onion.
Right.
Whether we're gonna get more people, more staffing, whether we're there, maybe that comes back that you're not gonna get staffing until 2025.
Sure.
We're gonna have to figure something else out. So, yeah, leaving it the way it is probably is, and keep working on it.
I would say I would leave it on the plan.
This was another one that I thought that it's one that we're doing. Could we do a little bit more? Probably, but again, it goes back to, we just don't have the bandwidth and the resources right now. I mean, we're doing the CPR, we're doing the first aid. We're actually adding new programs. Robert's done an amazing job with the program that he's doing with the opioid. So it's not like we haven't been doing this one. So this is another one that we're. What was that?
I would say we met that.
But you stopped doing it.
And should continue to move it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to maybe adjust it or leave it in there the way it is, or just adjust it, because it says right there, identify and innovate it. We need to keep doing it. Robert came up with a great program all on his own. That wasn't us. That Robert brought that to Chief Guerrero, said, hey, this is my idea. This is what I want to do. He drove it. He's still driving it. And doing a great job.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we are, in addition to the opioid education program, we also have the Stop the Bleed program that the public is, and we're getting one of those classes coming up on December 9th. So we do continue to expand this.
They're good classes, thank you.
Thank you for doing those.
And again, Robert has picked up where we've had, we have volunteers that are CPR instructors, but like, we don't, the class that Robert's putting on, we just don't have the people. The guys that are working, our staff that's working all the extra hours, they don't have extra hours to come in and work overtime for a class. That's just a lecture we don't have.
I'll tell you that Robert's done a great job, having been the program coordinator for risk reduction and now handing it off to Bill. Robert's done an incredible job of stepping up to the plate when we have no bandwidth at our level to be able to maintain. Unfortunately, this year our bandwidth just got crushed with everything else that we had going on, and our programs have dwindled, but we can continue to move forward with things that Robert's doing. So it's been great.
And we're still building it back up from COVID too, because we had a very limited schedule this year, and next year we're hoping to come back with, we're gonna have a set schedule of CPR, first aid, the classes that Robert had, trying to have a little bit better calendar as opposed to just doing it reactively when people ask for it. This is another one that points to regionalization. It's really kind of the same. Yeah, the way it is.
I think you guys do that because I think you've been driving a Fall City fire truck around last year.
We did. We did.
Reactive versus proactive.
It might have been white knuckling it, but
Yeah, our shared staffing program is the perfect example of this, of sharing resources and equipment that we needed. There's Mark always talked about, down the road, maybe we share backup apparatus. So we don't have to have a backup. Fall City doesn't have to have a backup, and Duval has a backup. Maybe we have 2 out of the 3. Or, as we get further down the road, whether there's, we looked at one point, we looked at sharing training officers. We all kind of pivoted to the consortium, but at one time, we had a proposal on the table that we were going to have one training officer for all three departments and was gonna manage it. So we've tried different things, just, you know, some of them haven't stuck. But I think this is a continuing goal that we're constantly working on. We're always looking for ways to be more efficient and, you know, economy of scale and try to not duplicate the wheel.
Like to just float something out there, talking with some of our surrounding colleagues, that peak daytime aid card can be shared amongst us in Fall City, us in East Side, us in Duval. That's a stretch, but like, you know.
There is a desire in the region.
Yeah, there's different groups right now that have the same needs as we do, and the only thing that's stopping us from making those agreements is us. All we have to do is do it. And I say that oversimplifying it, and I understand that, but it's just a conversation that can be had with our partners. And say, hey, you need an A car? Hey, we need an A car. Let's split the staffing. All good. Anyway, it hits on more than one of our goals of providing that coverage and sharing of resources.
And how much of that can be, how much of that needs to be maybe one city deciding to take the first step?
Oh, 100%. And
And-
that's all it is. It's one group needs to make the leap of faith, I'd say. And I will be very transparent and tell you that the current administration for Eastside is not that person. They have their hands full with their recent merger with Woodville, their recent
Mercer
merger
Island.
with Mercer Island,
And
and their
pending with,
upcoming merger with Duval.
Yeah.
They're busy, right? And so why would they voluntarily take on more? Now, if we came to them and said, hey, what do you think about this? So they might be open to it. I'm not gonna read the tea leaves. That's not something I'm gonna attempt to do, but being the conversation starter might be beneficial.
That's something we've kicked around idea wise, but
Yeah.
again, I think it goes down to, and as you know, and as Mike knows, is, you know, we need more help. And I think that conversation happens when we start finding out, you know, and I'm talking generalizations, but hey, we can get you 3 people next year, or we can get you 1 person. What's the best way to, you know, we can get you 1, we can get you 2, we can get you 3. How are we gonna pay for it, and what's the best way to utilize it? And I think that's where the conversation is if it comes out that the budget can only support 1 person, how can you best use that 1 person for the fire department? And that's where we can maybe have the conversations of, okay, if we hire 1 and they provide 1 and we provide 1 and we put together an A car and we share we share the cost, we share the proceeds from the transport, whatever it is, that would be how we can get to our goal. Because we realize, I mean, the budget is the budget, and for the next year, and we all, you know, I've been in the meetings, you've been in the meetings, the money's not there per se, but this is a need for us, and how we, you know, once we find out what we can do, I think there's different ways that we can approach it.
And these solutions have so many different fingers from an operational standpoint that our group can definitely get them. Especially when we're starting to align our goals with the city's goals and the council's goals. I think we can do a lot of really great things once we all kind of fall in step together and realize that, hey, our goal of not being overworked runs in line with your goal of regionally sharing assets. I mean, that's a cool time to be having a good conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, dreamland, but here we are.
I don't know that it is. I don't know that it is.
But Bill, you're not too far off, and our city administrator has really kind of heightened that awareness on overtime. And you've got mandatory overtime, and it's how do we figure out how to even that out, because we want to keep everybody happy. And we're probably expending resources that we could do a better job of stewarding. And that's kind of.
Well, and if there's a smarter way to go than the ladder truck, and there are maybe several pieces of equipment that we could get that could then be utilized in this kind of fashion of getting them manned without having to provide all the men.
So perfect example of that, Duval's brush truck utilizes a regional asset tracking group that says, hey, we have a brush truck. We have one person on it, we need 3. Who amongst us is gonna go? And all of the wildland nerds like myself love signing up for that, because we get to use somebody else's equipment for 2 weeks. We get paid by the state pays our wages, our backfill wages, and pays for the brush truck. And then we get to provide our people, so.
So
we
what
have
if,
the
what
right
if,
to
what if we owned
We do the
whatever
same
piece
thing.
of equipment that was?
And the money comes back to us. The state pays us, the state pays our employee, and the state will pay the backfill for that employee to not be. Because they're going out.
We've
And
done
that's for
fires.
deployments.
And that for deployments, very specifically for state and.
Right,
national
okay.
deployments. It has worked well for our partnering agencies.
And the first time we got the motor rebuilt on the current fire engine was when we sent it to California, so.
And
California
again, we're-
essentially paid for a new engine.
And yeah, that sending a type 1 or a full-size fire
Yeah.
engine is risky.
Yes.
That's why we typically do it in a type 6.
We did it.
Pickup stuff.
Up until now, we've been the one that has been supplying, we haven't done it in the last couple of years because our people that are wildland certified, we just haven't had the bandwidth.
5 years.
Sorry,
Not
Bill,
long
No,
since
I'm
we last-
a little bitter. I
Yeah,
haven't
I
gone on a deployment yet.
we haven't had the resource because we have to make sure there's people here that can work. To send somebody off for 2 weeks, we have to
Mission
make
one
sure
is
there's
our
someone here to
community.
work, and you all know where our overtime is. But in the past, we have had partnerships with Fall City where they would provide a person, we would provide a person, and Duval had a person signed up for the whole summer if they got deployed. And so we've done it, we just haven't been the lead agency.
Are
with
there
the
ways to
vehicles.
do it that, are there ways to do this sort of thing that don't involve a deployment? That are just kind of ongoing operations?
Through the ILAs, similar to what we have with our shared staffing agreement, where we have staff that can come in and work at our fire station. That's largely the direction you would go in that, if we had that shared aid car or.
You're diving into contracts.
Yeah, and that's contract stuff. at that point.
Contractual, how far. each
And there's no way to
district wants go.
get through that? It's just
Well, it'd be like we were talking about earlier, it'd be, for example, if we decided that we were going to have an aid car available to transport more often, then we'd be looking for ways to utilize it, because that's how the money's gonna come back, is we'd be bringing in more money from the transports, whether it's our patient, whether it's North Bend's patient, whether it's Fall City's patient. It would
If it's
be
our,
shared
if it's our,
resources.
if it's our vehicle,
We would, yeah, there would probably, you know, it'd be a contract, it'd be a formula that we have with the other agencies, just like we do now, to where you'd work that out where, you know, obviously, if you were providing the vehicle, you'd probably have a little bit more share of the pie than somebody that was just providing the person or the transport that you went and picked up. I mean, it's all something you can work out. But
And there are organizations that you'll see like Chehalis and Lewis County 6. They have a dual staffed station right now. So they have one of each of their apparatus running out of the same fire station because they have a remodel going on. And so they're sharing the station and they're just sharing in the cost, and it's all built contractually.
the things that you guys are talking about right here, are those all encapsulated under goal 3B? Would those be 3B things, or is that a different thing?
I would think it would be this, and like we were talking about, the part-time or looking at ways to increase the staffing. I think they're all kind of tied together.
That covers a bunch,
They'll touch
several
on
different.
It's crazy interesting to me, because it sounds like you're talking about making a vehicle pay for itself and then some, and also taking care of some of our understaffing issues by using staff from other places.
I just want to make sure I'm 100% clear. A vehicle paying for itself, in my experience, has only come from the wildland, not necessarily running POS.
Sure. But,
I'm sure you can figure out-
but this is some of it, it covers some of it.
Yeah.
You get more of a return on the vehicle, right?
Instead of just us using our assets for our business.
As they depreciate. Yeah.
There's ways.
Okay, moving on. I think we got enough on that one that we can keep moving forward with that one. I think the last two we have here, are, you can see here, Fire Ops 101. just to help elected officials get more understanding about what the fire department does. That's a program that we sponsored here at the station years ago. We did it for the union, held it here, but it was at our station.
I feel like I'm getting that now.
Oh,
Say this may be a little-
So this is putting you in bunker gear and putting you inside a building.
I think
Oh,
that's
okay,
cool.
alright.
Yes, let's do it.
No, this is close enough.
I've done it.
Well, that's it.
I think that one stays in there. That could be something that we could, I mean, that's all that is Eastside was supposed to do one last year. The union was supposed to do one a year or two ago and it either got canceled or they didn't do it. But those opportunities come up to where we could make sure that you know about it when it happens. Because it is, usually they're done by the union, not the department.
Yeah, there's some,
Eastside did do one for their electeds, just
they
internally.
extended the offer out this
I feel like I
direction,
got an
and
email.
then
Or a
Chief
couple
Kura
emails
had
or
a,
something.
That's fine to me.
had some, had a hiccup with how that was all produced, and I think it, fell short on our side of things. Is that the nicest way of saying it?
Sure.
Okay, I don't recall why.
I don't remember either. I don't.
It didn't
remember
go any
coming to
further.
I hope you took care of number 2 with the survey that then just.
I was not, I haven't seen the results and I was not given input on the questions. My predecessor might have had input on the questions, but eventually when we get some of that stuff back, yes, we will, we'll be using that information because I know there were some fire department specific questions. And I think that
You got
also,
the results.
I haven't seen them. Might have been a while ago. She hasn't rolled them out yet, I don't think, to everybody that she,
No.
yeah. So yeah, so that one would be, I mean, that goes back to part of when we, you know, as we build this with our next strategic plan, those are all things that you're gonna be doing as part of that, so. Okay. I think that was it. So those are all the ones that were up there. And, you know, it's close to, I mean, maybe this would be, maybe this would be a good point. I mean, like I said, this, you know, these are some things I threw out there just because I wasn't sure, but I think we're at a point now where we can kind of compile some of the stuff we did today and then think about maybe what are there, besides the ones that we had up there, are there any new ones that we want to have up there? One of them for sure is going to have to be, you know, planning for a new strategic plan. That's got to be something that, you know, they suggested that needs to be in this, having a plan in place for the city / fire department to have another plan, because if the city doesn't do it in 2024, the fire department's gonna have to do it on their own again. So that would be one that we're gonna wanna add. But if there's anything else, you know, maybe that's where we take this next is, you know, compile the notes, you know, make some changes to what we have, send that back out for everyone to kind of look at, and then reconvene to talk about, is there a new thing? And that could even almost be done at a, you know, could even be done at a public safety committee meeting too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a separate one like this. Originally, when we started this, we were trying to get it done by the end of the year. We ran into issues. But this doesn't, I mean, we're talking for accreditation purposes, we're engaging. This doesn't necessarily have to be done by the end of the year. As long as we're doing this and we're moving forward, that's what's gonna help, that's what we're gonna need for accreditation.
Correct, but we will need to create a new one in 2024 regardless of what happens moving forward.
Correct, yeah, this is the one that we're,
This is our stopgap.
this covered, they suggested that this one be from 2023 to 2025 is what they told me. So it would cover us through 24 if the city doesn't get one together, but like I said, if we don't get one in 2024, we have to have our own. Yeah.
Chief, would it be, within the scope of what you've done before, having another community advisory group brought together, just so that you can share this in a larger, beyond just the council?
For the next
With-
version, absolutely, I think.
I think from what I was told, getting this together is that they suggested that this was just, you know, use the authority having jurisdiction, have the council buy off on it. But they suggested not necessarily to engage the public until we were ready to do a full one. Because they didn't want to pollute or have, I can't think of the right word, they didn't want to have, you know, fatigue. And so they said, because this is more just kind of a extenuation of what we have,
Right,
that it wouldn't necessarily, they suggested not bringing the public into it.
but would that be a 24 or 2025 sort of endeavor?
Yeah, for the next, our next,
Yeah.
oh yeah, absolutely. The next full strategic plan is gonna be just like the one that you, participated in before.
So what you're gonna call it.
I believe that would be depending on what this, I would like to see that happen in 2024 with what the cities do.
Okay,
But that's up to,
like fall sort of thing.
that's up to the council, that's up to the administration as to what that, and then that's where we're saying if it looks like that is maybe being pushed out to 25. I think the fire department is gonna come back and look at our budget and try and do the fire department one sooner. If it's looking tea leaf wise that the city is not gonna be able to get to theirs in 24, we will have to, near the end of 24, we'll have to start our own to take effect in 25.
Keep this in mind, though, that we've talked about doing the sales tax, which we have to go to the voters this next fall in 24.
What do we have to wait for on that? I mean, why don't we just go?
No, we have.
We've been talking about this
No,
for a couple of years now.
no, we've got to go when it's, the timing is right, and we want to choose an election cycle where we don't have to put bill on running it.
So
Because-
24 is one of those cycles, isn't it?
Well, exactly, but we have to be out of the gate by March of 2024 in order to have it on the ballot for the general election of
So what
2024.
do we gotta do for that?
We can
We're
work on
starting
that.
tomorrow night.
There you go. Look,
But,
again,
but here's the,
interim, here she is, city administrator, I'm sorry, outerim city administrator.
so here's the point
Killing it.
is we need to time the citizens group before the vote comes up, so that we've got a community of supporters that already understand it, can advocate for it.
Yeah, we gotta put together a pro.
I see what you're saying.
Team or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that-
Yeah,
isn't
that comes around
Are we
about
starting
May,
off the
June.
agenda? This is-
We, yes, I think we are talking about not what we're supposed to be talking
Oh,
Chief,
oh, I'm so sorry. I'm
Plus,
all,
we didn't make a meeting.
about. You got Robert or something.
about. Yeah, thanks, Ron.
Uh,
Go ahead.
yeah, if I can just add just a thought, having lived in a fire department for 25 years on the east side of the mountains and seeing what's happening now with our climate in the summertime on the west side over here, I think we keep skating around the fact that we are a major wildfire, wildland, urban interface area. And it's just a matter of time before we have an Oakland type of firestorm that happened in 1991. And if if you recall what happened back then in the news, that took out over 2,800 single family homes, over 400 apartment and condo units. It was a over 1,500 acre fire. And they said it could never happen because there was too much asphalt, too much concrete. Yet we are looking at a potential like that. When I drive through Snoqualmie in the summertime and the wind is blowing hard, the first thing I think about is like the Taylor Bridge fire over in Cle Elum that went, by the time I got to it, it was all the way to Ellensburg. And I think we have the makings for that perfect storm. And as these temperatures begin to increase in hotness, if you will, and our fuels develop and become more flammable, I really think that we have to have, as a focus on one of these slides, we have to have an urban interface fire plan. And that includes some of the things we've been talking about, like equipment. How would we develop a plan that then brings in the equipment so we could prepare for such a tragedy in our area? And I think in the west side of the mountains, I mean, I've never seen so many summertime fires, wildland fires on the west side as recently in the last 3 years. And I think we're going to start to see more and more of those as the fuels become more combustible because the heat is higher and we're going longer spells without rain. And I just worries me a lot every time I feel that wind howling through Snoqualmie on a hot summer day. It wouldn't take much to end up like Oakland. So I personally, my thought is I think we need something to address that in the strategic plan.
Yeah, I
Even-
think that's a perfect example of something new. I mean, like you said, we've touched on it on a little bit, a few places with equipment so I think that's a perfect example of a new one that we need to see to be adding, to be working on for the next the next year. Go ahead, Kat.
Even more recently, in the last 6 months, is the Lahaina fires. And these just, Robert is describing all the things in Oakland that happened in Maui as well. And, with temperatures reaching unprecedented in the hundreds for us, when does that happen? So things are definitely changing, and I agree with Robert. We need to prepare for it. And I'll tell you what, if you want to talk to somebody who built up a wildland department in Kitsap County, Robert was the one who did it and traded up on the vehicles, just as we've been talking about. So excellent resources within our career folks and even within the volunteer corps here.
All right, so marching forward, we'll work together to modify what we've come up with. And then we'll bring it back to you probably by email to start with, and then we'll make a plan for how we want to get together again and talk about it again. So thanks, everybody. I know it was a lot to try. We had it scheduled. We had to reschedule it. I appreciate everybody making the time and effort to get this done. We all are pretty busy. So thank you for making the time tonight.
Was this actually productive for you guys, or?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think it's, like I said, we were working on it and it got put to the side, and we probably didn't put as much effort into our strategic plan as we should have the last 2 years. And I'm looking at it again, as same as the accreditation, is we need to bring it back as to giving us more of a plan for where we're going the next 2 years.
Well, we all blame you.
Well, it's okay. I got big shoulders.
You need help moving furniture.
Close out
Well,
green
I
tree.
cut up that tree that hit my house on Saturday.
Oh, you did cut it up?
Moved all the
Don't
wood.
forget to close out
Oh
your
my
meeting.
gosh.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you two online.
Thank you.
See y'all. Good night.